I really like Thanksgiving. It's my favorite holiday. Of all the holidays that we celebrate, all the holidays that we have on the calendar, Thanksgiving is my favorite. And I think there's probably three main reasons for that. One is usually get to spend it with some very loving family or friends, people that I really care about and really want to spend time with. So I have good memories, fond memories, all the way from my childhood up through today of Thanksgivings where we would spend a lot of time with family or friends that we really loved. I also really love the food that we eat at Thanksgiving. My wife makes this incredible sweet potato casserole that could be dessert. Don't tell her I said that or she'll make it dessert. But it's awesome. It's great. I love it. That on top of all that, I just love the food of Thanksgiving. And then probably the third element that makes Thanksgiving so memorable is that incredibly mediocre football we're subjected to every year. There's something about that that's part of this tradition that's necessary even. The Lord showing up in our trials, right? Thanksgiving has some implications. Just the word Thanksgiving has some implications. And the first one is that we have a reason to give thanks, something that we are thankful for. It implies that something has brought us joy or happiness. Maybe it was a gift. Maybe it was some help in a time of need. Maybe it was a thoughtful word. But there's some reason that we feel a sense of thankfulness in our hearts. And then the other thing that it really implies is there's an object to which we focus that thankfulness, that we direct that thankfulness toward. Something outside of ourselves has brought us this satisfaction, this joy, this good feeling, and we want to thank someone or something. Well, I want to look at a story where somebody does this. Somebody does direct thanksgiving in a really good way. And I found that in the book of Luke, chapter 17. I want to invite you to look that up. Now, if you're using a Bible that we supply in here, it's going to want to fall open to Genesis, okay? It's been trained to do that over the last 10 months. But you're going to have to fight it and go to the other side, go to the other end to the book of Luke. So try to do that. And I want to give you just a little background to this passage. Jesus is about to go to Jerusalem for the last time. He is about to enter the final phase of fulfilling the purpose for which he became a person and came and dwelt among us. And so he is just about to go to Jerusalem and do that. As he begins the journey, he's between Galilee and Samaria. Boy, it's not because I'm old, but I almost forgot Samaria there. Weird. So he's right there on the border. He's going into a village, and he encounters these 10 guys who cannot live in the village, and we're going to discover why in a moment. A mixture of probably Jewish men and Samaritan men. They are not friendly toward each other under normal circumstances, but these are not normal circumstances. And because of their situation, they probably get along pretty well. So let's go to Luke chapter 17 and see what the Lord has to say to us from this book. I want to ask you if you're able to stand as we read this. These are God's words to us tonight. We're going to be in verse 11. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go show yourselves to the priest." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back, praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And then he said to him, "Rise, go, your faith has made you well. God's words to us tonight from the book of Luke. Thank you. You can be seated. I just want to share 3 quick thoughts with you that occurred to me as I was kind of reading and studying up on this. And the first thought is that we need to thank God for everything. Now, if you have a little bit of a sarcastic bone in you, and some of you do, you're saying, no kidding, Mike. I've been in church for many years, and no one's ever told me anything except I should thank God for everything. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Yet, how often do we need to be told to thank God? I know I often will find myself thinking or saying things like this, and perhaps you have as well. Man, did I work hard for that. I sacrificed an awful lot to accomplish this thing. I overcame so many obstacles to get to this point and to have this thing, or to be able to go on this trip or do whatever it is that I want to do. Well, if you're like me, then we need to back up a couple steps and ask ourselves another couple questions. Where did the ability, the time, the resources to get to those things come from, to achieve the things that we've worked for? How about the talent, the wealth, the wisdom? Maybe you have a high IQ that allows you to do things other people can't do. Maybe you have incredibly wise insights, some business sense that most people don't have. Where did those things come from that allowed you to accomplish what you've accomplished, attain what you have attained? It's a rhetorical question, right? We all know that God is the source of all those good things about us that allow us to accomplish and become and attain what we have. So, no kidding. And yet, we still need to be told, just like the kids at Christmas and birthdays, what do you say? I remember hearing that over and over and over. What do you say? Thanks, Grandma. Even though we know. The second thought I had as I went through this was that faith activates God's grace. Faith activates God's grace. Now, before I get into that too much, I want to talk about this word leprosy, because in English, we talk about leprosy, and we're talking about a very specific disease. The ironic thing is, it's not even a skin disease, it's a nerve disease that causes us not to feel pain, to feel heat, to feel cold, to feel things that are going to hurt us. And so that's why we have skin problems. We crush our fingers, our toes get cold, something gets burned, and we don't feel it. And so skin gets damaged, and it looks like a skin disease. Well, in this text and in a lot of biblical texts, the term leprosy is a more general term that has to do with skin diseases in general, an infection or something that's long-term and serious. But it's a general term. And so these men have skin diseases that would fall under this category. In Leviticus 13, there's a whole chapter dedicated to how to treat people with skin diseases. And so this isn't a moment where somebody gets a rash and they suddenly have to go live outside the city. There's a process that you go through to determine whether that's necessary. And the priest gets involved, and they go through several steps, and there's a process, and then finally when it's discovered that this is a serious disease, it's an infection, other people are going to have problems with this, it's dangerous to the society as a whole, now you need to go live outside the city. And so that's what we find with these 10 men. They have left, they are in quarantine, they are in isolation. Those are terms we understand really well because of our conditioning due to COVID's impact on us, right? So we can probably, at this point in the history of our lives, understand what these guys are going through maybe a little better than we could have a couple years ago. Jesus tells them to go show themselves to the priest. First of all, he's honoring the command that God gave Moses to write down in the book of Leviticus. So he's honoring the law that God his Father gave. He's also testing these men, their trust, their faith in Jesus himself. He says, "Go show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. Not before. They didn't start going because they were clean, because they were healed. They were healed and cleansed as they went. I think in the Old Testament of a story about a guy named Naaman. He's the commander of the Aramean army. The Arameans and the Israelites are not friends. They fight a lot. They have wars. And so this guy, Naaman, would have led his troops against the people of Israel many times over the years. He has a skin disease. He has leprosy. He comes to Israel to find the prophet Elisha and have him heal him. And so he comes. Elisha sends his servant. The servant says, "Go wash in the Jordan 7 times. Go dunk yourself 7 times. And Naaman gets very angry. Because number one, he says, "I thought he would come. I thought the prophet himself would come to me. I didn't think he would send his servant. Number two, I thought he'd come and wave his hands over me and say something and go through some ritual. And then number three, there's nicer rivers back home." He considered the Jordan to be very dirty. Now, I don't know if it was. Maybe it was a certain section. I don't know. But to him, that was dirty water. There's much nicer places. Well, Naaman's servant says, "Man, you would do anything. Why can't you just go dunk in this river 7 times? So he does, and the 7th time he comes up, and his skin is clean. Elisha could have said, "Be cleansed." Jesus could have said to these men, "Be cleansed," and it could have happened instantaneously. But in those instances, they're told, "Go, do something." A step of faith first. Faith leading to this gracious act, this good thing in their lives. This is a common theme in Luke in general. In chapter 7, verse 50, we see a woman anointing Jesus' feet and cleaning his feet with her hair. He's in the middle of a dinner party, and at the end he says, "Your faith has saved you." In chapter 8, verse 48, a woman who's been bleeding for many years comes and touches Jesus' robes. And Jesus says to her, "Your faith has healed you." In chapter 18, verse 42, a blind man calls out to Jesus, tells him he wants to see. And Jesus says, "Your faith has made you well." We see the same thing here in chapter 17. "Rise and go, your faith has made you well." Luke did a lot of traveling with the Apostle Paul. This is probably his version of Ephesians 2, 8, and 9, which says, "By grace you have been saved through faith." The grace that saves you runs through this conduit of faith. Now you could ask, where does the faith come from? And that's an act of grace in and of itself. We could have that chicken-egg conversation about faith and grace all night. But the way Luke plays this out, the way he presents it, is that grace flows through our faith. And that often takes a step in the right direction in order to get it. Well, the third thought I have for the night is that we need to check our responses to God. We need to check how we respond to him, if we even respond to him. We are all lepers. Like it or not, we need to understand that we have a bout with a condition that causes us to be condemned to separation from God, the very one for whom we were created to have fellowship, to be in relationship with. Our condition condemns us to separation and isolation from God himself. There's no escape, there's no cure, there's no prescription to take care of that. We are condemned people, and we will perish because of it, just like these men. And then suddenly, salvation appears. Like Jesus walking along the road, And suddenly these men see Jesus. Hey, here's the answer. And so they call out to him. We have an opportunity. Jesus makes an appearance in our life, and we call out to him. We cry out to him and tell him that we want his death and resurrection to count for us. I want you to save me. That act of faith, demonstrated in our confidence in his death and resurrection, is the answer we need. Through that, we're healed. Through that, our life of separation and isolation from God is taken care of. Notice that Jesus doesn't withhold his grace from the other 9, from the 9 thankless people, but he's very pleased with the one who does come back and say thank you. If you're a parent, many of us in this room are, some of you will be someday, there are many moments where we sacrifice for our kids, we give things for our kids, we provide things for our kids, and they don't say thank you. And sometimes they're actually annoyed and irritated with us for not giving us the red one or the bigger one or whatever. And so not only do we not hear thanks, but we might even hear some grumbling and complaining as we provide, as we sacrifice, as we give. It's not that we will ever stop. You know, when our boys would do that, it didn't mean we would stop giving them things, sacrificing things, offering things. It just was so much nicer when they would stop and be grateful. And we have a situation here where Jesus doesn't cast that disease back on the other 9. No, they still get to be healed. Go show themselves to the priest, have themselves declared clean, and then they go back and live with their families. What a great thing. Now, I am ashamed and embarrassed to say I am more often like the 9. I ask God for things. I want his blessing. I say, help me, provide for me, please. And then when it happens, when it comes through, I thank the person that came to bring me that thing. I think, wow, I worked really hard for that. And I forget to look behind those things and realize that God provided something for me that I desperately needed, and thank him for it. I want to close with this thing. I want us to stop for a moment, close our eyes, and quietly think of something in our lives that we have worked hard for, that we have sacrificed for, that we have gone above and beyond to attain in our lives, and that perhaps we have kind of taken credit for. Think about something like that in your life. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Now I want to ask you to think about what it took, the talent, the ability, the mental acuity, all those things, the ability to work hard even. And I want you to thank God for those gifts, talents, abilities that brought that about in your life. Lord, you do so many things for us. Things that we don't even know about. And you don't require that we thank you. You still provide. Lord, I want to thank you that you don't require for me to behave correctly all the time in order to bless me the next time, but that like my parents and like many parents all around the world, you just love me so much that in spite of my shortcomings, in spite of the times when I totally forget and I totally overlook you, you still provide and you still care and you still love, you still offer grace, you still offer healing, and cleaning. What a great God you are.